The Iranian government is very comfortable subjugating Canadians for not wearing hijab. I mean, that's what hitting each other with sticks and stones. I have no issue with that. I'd rather enjoy it. But the problem is that Canadian citizens, knowing fully well that Hamas is a terror organization, but for them, it's all right. It's all right, absolutely. Even if Hamas has killed Jewish babies, it's all right because... Jai Hind friends, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching the Chanakya Dialogues English. Like this video, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon. A 4-day ceasefire has been agreed upon between Hamas and the Israeli government, and apparently a lot of people were behind this pressure. A lot of people, like especially President Joe Biden, was saying, there is too much of heat regarding people who've been killed and we need to give time so that the injured can be moved to safety, can get medical aid, etc., etc. Gaza is in a very bad shape. In an all-night meeting, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, is sitting with his entire cabinet, and this is what he told them. He says, this is not something that we wanted, but this is something that we have to do because this is the right decision. And finally, the Israelis said okay to a 4-day ceasefire in which 50 hostages comprising of children and women will be freed from Hamas captivity. And also, they're saying that for every 1 day of ceasefire, 10 more hostages will be freed. And what happens when Hamas runs out of hostages? I think Hamas will go back on its promise. It will take a U-turn. There are 2-3 things. How each party will, address this issue. And this is going to be the point of discussion today. I'll tell you what. Israel has agreed to this ceasefire simply because Israel has no other way. It is a democratically elected government, unlike the nearby region or the Middle East, where there is no democracy at all. So the ruler pretty much doesn't care what happens to his subjects. They don't care if the subjects live or die. But in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu is responsible. He is responsible towards the citizens. He's answerable, to the parliament and to his cabinet colleagues. He's answerable to the people of Israel. And that is how democracies work. So tomorrow, the parents and the family members of those who have been, kidnapped by Hamas, they will ask Benjamin Netanyahu, where are our loved ones? Where are our family members? And he'll have to have the answers. If this had happened in some other Arabic country, the local, something like Jordan or even Lebanon, Palestine or Egypt, nobody would have been answerable. Nobody. They said, let them die, we don't care. But here in Israel, the government is answerable. So that is one part of it. The second part is obviously, Hamas is going to use this to regroup. And that much is clear. And this is the only reason why Hamas took hostages. Nobody's asking this question, unfortunately. Why did Hamas take hostages? I mean, they'd come to kill Israelis. And as if killing Israelis, innocent non-combatants, wasn't enough, they took around 250 odd people as hostage. Why? Why did they do that? What was the reason why they took hostages? There are 2-3 things. Obviously, Hamas knew that Israel will retaliate, and they needed a human shield. Now, traditionally, Hamas has been using human shields. That is what Hamas does. So all of Hamas's headquarters, they're never out in the open. They're never where you can say, okay, these are non-combatants and these are combatants. And this is something that really frustrates the Israelis. Because Hamas will have his headquarters in a school, let's say, or in a hospital, or in an orphanage, or in the middle of a supermarket. And they will attack Israelis, and when Israelis attack them back, using the same grid reference from where the missiles were launched, the Hamas have a lovely victim card to play. The Palestinians are masters. I mean, they've taught the world how to play the victim card. There are no bigger, quote-unquote, victims than the Palestinians. Nobody cries better than the Palestinians. Nobody beats their chest more than the Palestinians. Nobody shares their agony and grief and markets it so beautifully in front of the world like the Palestinians. And this is exactly what Hamas is doing now. What Hamas is going to do is, in this ceasefire, is going to regroup. But let me tell you what the Israelis are going to do in this case. Okay? Hamas thinks ceasefire. You see, what Hamas is thinking is that there'll be a ceasefire, there'll be no hostilities, which is fine. But it does not mean that Israeli forces will stop looking. Israeli forces will stop taking, action in self-defense, or they will not be there. When the ceasefire comes into effect, Gaza is going to be swamped by the Israeli army. It's going to be swamped by the Israeli army. You're going to have hundreds and thousands of Israeli soldiers inside Gaza. and it's going to be horribly tough to hide from the Israeli army, and it's only a matter of days. And when they say ceasefire, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? Are they saying that, we are going to stop bombing? Yes. The Israeli Air Force will stop bombing. Needless to say, they'll stop bombing. But this does not mean that they're going to stop searching. They'll continue searching. It is not. A ceasefire here in this case is not a stop to hostilities. The hostilities will continue. There will be door-to-door searches. There will be street-to-street searches. There will be tunnel-to-tunnel searches. And that is not going to stop. So this is war by other means. Everybody will change their tactics. Hamas will try to regroup. Hamas has been battered. Horribly battered. And I'm telling you, if those hostages were not there, ladies and gentlemen, Hamas would have been dead long back. Because then Israelis would have brought out the big bombs. They would have absolutely flattened Gaza. Absolutely. First, tell all the civilians to get out. And once the civilians were out, flatten Gaza. Turn it into a parking lot. The Israelis would have done that. The only thing stopping the Israelis is, A, lots of civilians are still there because Hamas is not allowing the Palestinians to leave. Part 1, Part 2, there are their own hostages. So anybody who thinks that there has been, indiscriminate bombarding in Gaza, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the Israelis have been stopped by these two factors. Local Palestinian civilians, 1. 2, their own hostages. Otherwise, there would have been no Gaza. If there was only Hamas in Gaza, let's say all the civilians had gone away. This is why Hamas was asking the Palestinian civilians not to go away. It was forcibly. It was shooting at their own people. They were shooting at their own people, telling them not to leave because they knew that the Israeli spy agencies were watching. And once the Israeli spy agencies, let us assume, hypothetically speaking, that people had said to Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister, there are no civilians in Gaza, there are no non-combatants in Gaza. There is only Hamas. There is only Hamas in Gaza. You know what Netanyahu would have done? He would have flattened Gaza in 24 hours. They have the tools, they have the ammunition, they have the equipment. They would have flattened Gaza. The only reason why many buildings in Gaza are still standing is because of non-combatants and hostages. That's it. Now, Russia's Wagner Group, very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Russia's Wagner Group has offered air defense to Hezbollah and Iran. Now, what is air defense? Typically and this happens in case of missiles also, but I'm going to stick to aircraft just to make it very simple. You see? So when an aircraft flies over enemy zone or near an enemy zone, the enemy knows that an enemy aircraft is approaching or somebody else's aircraft is approaching. That they do with the help of radars, right? This radar locks on to the aircraft. So maybe there is an electronic signature, maybe there is a heat signature, you see? So it locks on, it knows. How does it know? They have a technique called the IFF, Identification Friend or Foe. We were taught that in the army, but we were taught from the point of view of infantry. Now this is different. This is the Air Force. So I'm sure it's highly technical and I'm sure there are hundreds of computers involved, but they figure out that this is, for example, an enemy aircraft. The radar locks in, the computer initiates a command, the missile takes off. This is a surface-to-air missile. India also has a lot of surface-to-air missiles. So this is typically a surface-to-air missile. The surface-to-air missile takes off and then it starts chasing the aircraft. So the aircraft goes like this, the missile will go like this, and if the aircraft turns, the missile will also turn. It will keep on chasing the aircraft. This is how an anti-aircraft missile or surface-to-air, right, a missile will work. This whole thing is called air defense. At least in the Indian Army, we call it air defense. And so it provides a security umbrella. It provides a protection umbrella to the surroundings and especially to cities, strategic installations, etc. Now, what has happened is you're aware of the Wagner Group. You're aware of Prigozhin, the guy who revolted against Putin, against Russia. And people say that Putin had him killed. His plane crashed and all that. So Russian Federation has now tasked the Wagner Group with providing air defense cover to Hezbollah, which is controlled by Iran and Iran itself. Now, why is Iran asking for air cover? There are 2-3 stories behind it, ladies and gentlemen, and please allow me to explain how this is working out. So, ever since Israel started retaliating against Hamas, and there was massive bombardment of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, the Muslim world especially, a lot of people condemned it. Even non-Muslim countries were saying that, no, this is too much, right? which is pure idiotic behavior, but that's okay. If they want to condemn it, it's their wish. I have nothing to say. Most of the Muslim countries, in fact, all the Muslim countries said, no, this is very bad and you're mistreating the people of Gaza, indiscriminate killing, etc., etc. At the forefront was Iran. And a lot of people say that Iran was the one which funded this entire exercise, which enabled, quote unquote, this entire exercise. Now, Iran says that Iran got the world together, the Muslim world together in an OIC conference and said, we must take 3 steps against Israel. We have discussed this in the past at the cost of repetition. Let me tell you again. So Iran said, we are going to take 3 steps against Israel. Number 1, military step. Let's go there. Let's fight. Iran said. The rest of the Muslim world backed off. Even Iran was not going to go there. Even Iran would have never gone to fight. These are just empty words of Iran. The Iranian government is very comfortable subjugating women for not wearing hijab. I mean, that's what they're experts in. Their war-fighting capabilities are against 16-year-old girls. So if you think that the Iranian army is an army that will go, it'll cross hundreds and hundreds of miles and go and fight an enemy in a foreign land, that's not the Iranian army for you. All right? They're not like that. They're big on talk. They're very big on talk. Kill the Jews, throw the Jews into the sea, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So all these movie dialogues are something that Iran absolutely owns. But when it comes to real war fighting, Iran is not so tough. Iran said, let's go and fight in Gaza. Everybody backed off. They said no. And everybody knew that there were 2 US aircraft carriers. In fact, there were 2 battle groups, not just aircraft carriers. There were 2 battle groups, and still today there are 2 battle groups there and a nuclear submarine. You know what that means? Forget about the battle groups. Let's just talk about the nuclear submarine. What does it mean actually? This nuclear submarine simply means one push of the button, no Iran. Gone. In a few minutes, no Iran. No Ayatollah. No hijab. No moral police. No nothing. Just wasteland. That is the capability of American nuclear submarines. Everybody knows that. So these guys are big on talk, but very low on action now. Second thing that Iran had recommended, that cut off fuel supplies to Israel. That too hasn't happened. And then it said, break off all diplomatic contact with Israel, Take away shut down your embassies, recall your ambassadors, throw out their ambassadors, etc. 1 or 2 countries might have reacted, Iran itself and maybe Turkey, among the Muslim countries I'm saying, they might have done it. But what has actually happened is that there wasn't much reaction from the Islamic world. And suddenly, Iran found itself boxed in a corner. Even today, Iran does not know how to react to this because Iran had whipped everybody into this war frenzy. Let's attack, jihad fi sabilillah, we are going to kill the Jews. There was this pitch that Iran had raised this war to, the fever pitch. And then suddenly it saw that nobody was reacting. And there was this I would have been ashamed had I been an Irani, which I fortunately am not. But I would have been ashamed. Iran was begging the Muslim countries, let's at least do something. Let's do something. Nobody listening to Iran. Because you don't argue with American aircraft carriers. These are wise words. They're coming from me, but they're wise words. You don't argue with an American aircraft carrier. The 100,000-ton displacement, nuclear propelled, carrying, intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're floating cities. And these are carrier groups. They have nuclear submarines. They have aircraft carriers. They have destroyers. They have fighter aircraft. They have gunships. They can flatten a dozen Arab countries there if they want, without moving an inch. They don't need to move. They are in harbor. Let them be at harbor. All they do is stand there and flatten everything around them. Especially Iran. Iran won't know what hit Iran. It's gone. Over. So, people might have spoken to Iran and said, just relax, take it easy. We are not ready for a beating yet. And suddenly Iran finds itself isolated because no major Muslim country is willing to break diplomatic relations with Israel, B, shut off oil supplies, C, attack, nobody's doing anything. Now, Iran gets boxed into a corner. Coming back to the Wagner Group issue. What does Iran say? I need air defense cover. Because my gamble of galvanizing the Muslim world against Israel has failed. And if Israel gets a crazy idea, okay, if Israel gets a crazy idea, they have F-35s. And if Israel says, okay, I think, we should, if Netanyahu says, okay, let's drop a goodbye bomb on Tehran. That's it. There is nothing Iran can do. See, Iran, big words. Massive talk. Massive talk. Iran, a lot of bluster, but nothing on ground. Which is true for most of the Muslim countries. 99% of the Muslim countries. A lot of bluster. Look at Pakistan. A lot of bluster. We will do this. We will fight Gaza, I don't know what, Hind or in India. And we will fight in Gaza and we'll fight in Palestine and all that. Everybody roaring on the streets. Except that most of the Pakistanis, by mistake, I'm sure, I trust my Pakistani friends. I'm sure they wanted to go to Palestine. I'm sure they wanted to go to Gaza, but by mistake they landed up in Avonfield in London. So they landed up at the wrong address. But I'm sure they wanted to go to Palestine. I'm sure. I trust my Pakistani friends. And ladies and gentlemen, Dr. S. Jaishankar has discussed the Canada issue with Miss Penny Wong, who is the Foreign Affairs Minister of Australia. And when asked by the media that did you discuss Canada with her, Dr. Jaishankar was frank and open. He said, yes, we did. And there's one thing that I would like to mention here, that Australia shares good relations with both Canada and India, and we'd like to appraise, and we wanted to appraise Australia about our point of view in this entire matter. And they said that, Canada unfortunately has become a home of extremism. There are extremists of all varieties in Canada now, and they're working against India. And this is something that India will not tolerate. I mean, sure, if Canada wants freedom of expression, this is what I'm saying. This is not what Dr. Jaishankar said. This I am saying. If Canada wants freedom of expression, sure. I mean, we have no issues with that. Whatever Canada, I couldn't pretty much care less if Canadians were, hitting each other with sticks and stones. I have no issue with that. I'd rather enjoy it. But the problem is that Canadian citizens, all these Khalistanis, these Canadian citizens, are threatening our High Commission. They're threatening our officers. They're threatening our High Commissioner there. They're defacing temples, and that is something that India will not tolerate. So this is the essence of what Dr. Jaishankar told Miss Penny Wong. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with this I come to the end of the video. Now for question and answers. Major Arya, Jai Hind, Sandeep here. Jai Hind, Sandeep ji. My question is about the propaganda war around the Israel-Hamas conflict. Do you think Israel has handled it so far? And what lessons can India learn from this? I think Israel has done it pretty well till now, though there are a lot of people supporting Hamas and Palestine, because the Palestinians and people from other Muslim countries have infiltrated everywhere across the world. Yeah. So there is massive support. The Jews are very less in number, you have to understand. The Jews are a microscopic minority in the world. But people from Muslim countries, they're everywhere. They're across Europe, they're everywhere. And they are now rising in support for Hamas, knowing fully well that Hamas is a terror organization, but for them, it's all right. It's all right, absolutely. Even if Hamas has killed Jewish babies, it's all right, because for many of Hamas's supporters, killing Jewish babies is absolutely okay. I mean, it's fine. There's this term in Arabic called wajib ul-qatl. I'm sure you know what it means. Wajib ul-qatl. That means it's all right to kill them. So that's what I think Israel has handled it pretty well till now, but I think Israel is getting more and more content out, and Israel needs to develop these capabilities more and more, in future, information warfare capabilities. I think it needs to do it. And what lessons can India learn from this? Yeah, India can learn that, never put your guard down, never assume. We have suffered Kargil, we have suffered 26/11. And what we have learned from this conflict is never put your guard down. Never, ever, ever, ever. Eternal vigilance. This is a saying. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Why don't Khalistanis just go and claim Alberta as their new Khalistan? I don't know where Alberta is, my friend. But yeah, I'm happy to recognize Canada as Khalistan. I don't mind if Canada, forget about Alberta. I don't know where Alberta is, but I'm sure that it's somewhere in Canada. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, but I think it's in Canada. So why don't they make it the new Khalistan? I wouldn't mind if, they're welcome to call Canada Khalistan from tomorrow, yeah. And I'm happy to call it Khalistan also. It is Khalistan anyway. Now, Shakti Keswan says, Jai Hind Major, it's obvious that Israel-Hamas conflict that China is doing. Could this war delay the IMEC? Yeah, it will. It will delay it a little bit, I think, because the players are involved in all of that. And yeah, it's China is doing. I'm convinced that China is doing. I'm convinced. Yes, it will delay it a little bit, but I think the partners and the players are committed to making IMEC happen, and I think they'll make it happen. It might get delayed by a couple of years, but it'll happen. So ladies and gentlemen, with this I come to the end of the video. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to press the bell icon. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram, Bharat Mata Ki Jai.